had Chairman Saints has had a bill sitting in this committee for most of this session. He has been very busy working on this bill, talking to the Department of Ag, and very complicated. I've lots of things here, and I wanted our committee to hear a little bit about his concerns and what this bill is trying to do. It's a hearing-only bill this morning. We agreed to, so, but our hemp, this committee is very familiar with our hemp issues in our state, and the good and the bad around it. And so thank you, Representative, for bringing this. HB265.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as a reflection of our conversations with multiple stakeholders, including the Department of Ag, there is a substitute that you should have in front of you, LC 55051-2S, which is a reflection of really restricting down to the cannabinoids that that are the most known and the most utilized in this synthetic creation of a high product. As mentioned before multiple times in this committee, so I won't elaborate on the distinction, but again, marijuana is defined by the 2018 Farm Bill as something with 0.3% or more Delta-9. Hemp is described as anything as a cannabis plant with less than 0.3% of Delta-9. Delta-9 being the predominant psychoactive effect is what gets you high. Delta-8, its very similar looking but less hard-working little brother, is also capable of getting you high. It's naturally created, but until it's synthetically created, which it can be through that hemp plant, through the CBD in that hemp plant, it can be synthetically created to produce a much larger high than that would occur naturally. That's what this is getting to, because the 2018 Farm Bill does not talk about Delta-8 or any of those synthetic derivatives other than the main naturally high component, which is Delta-9. This bill aims to eliminate Delta-8 in hemp products within the state of Georgia. I think we have. You should have a yellow package from our friends at the Georgia for Responsible Marijuana Policy that have tried to kind of hone in on the Delta-8 issue and the synthetic highs that all the other synthetic components that can be utilized by the industry for an unintended consequence. But I'll leave it at that. I know there's a couple of folks who know more than me and on the components of this, but again, this is just to address a very similar psychoactive component that wasn't addressed in the definition of hemp.
Thank you for this information in this yellow packet. It does really talk about some good information concerning that. Are there any questions of the author? We do have some people wanting to speak to the bill, and we can, seeing no questions right for this moment, we'll come back for the committee. But I'd like to ask some Michael Mummer to come and speak. Georgia's for Responsible Marijuana Policy, I think.
Thank you, Chairman, Vicki, and Representatives. Again, Michael Mumper, Georgians for Responsible Marijuana Policy. We're a 501c4 nonprofit since 2017, aiming for responsible, safe marijuana policies. Representative Saines did a fantastic job at explaining the difference between hemp and marijuana. They are different plants. They're both part of the cannabis family. Hemp tends to be taller. Marijuana tends to be bushier and shorter, but the legal definition is that 0.3% level that Representative Saines talked about. Anything over 0.3 is marijuana, under is hemp. THC then and CBD are two of the compounds that make up both hemp and marijuana. They're the most well-known. THC is the psychoactive one that gets someone high. CBD does not get someone high unless it is synthetically driven, as Representative mentioned. It's important because when products get a certain level of THC, they can start to get the new user high. Just 10 milligrams can get a new user high. By comparison, the old joint back in the day would have about 100 milligrams of THC. So 10 milligrams is not a lot. Because the potency of marijuana is going up every year as botanists and scientists get more sophisticated in the way they grow it. And because of perceptions of harm of marijuana that are going down, more people are using it more regularly. It used to be that 1 out of 11 people who used marijuana could develop a cannabis use disorder, 1 in 11. These days, the most recent studies show that it's like 30%. 1 in 3 people who use marijuana products can develop a cannabis use disorder. So we have to be very wary of how available we're making THC, especially the high THC products. Now that's important because, as Chairman Saines mentioned, the Farm Bill addressed Delta 9 THC. That's the most well-known THC within marijuana, Delta 9, which is why it was specifically named in the Farm Bill. The problem, as we may know, is that it didn't name other cannabinoids within marijuana, like that either occur naturally or can be semi-synthetically derived, like Delta 8, like Delta 10, like Delta 6. There's many. So this meant that consumable hemp products could contain only 0.3% Delta 9 THC, which is legally hemp. But that same product could contain 95% Delta 8 THC, and it would get someone just as high as 95% Delta 9 THC. What does that look like? So for example, there is a smoke shop in Helen, Georgia called Alpine Dispensary. They're in Helen, Georgia. We know that's north of Atlanta. And they have a billboard in South Georgia. This is south of Warner Robins. I was driving from Tifton to Warner Robins, past this huge billboard with a marijuana leaf, Alpine Dispensary. Now, why would a smoke shop in North Georgia be advertising marijuana in South Georgia? And it's because Delta 8 is not regulated, hence legal, and you can order it online and have it shipped to you for free if you order at least $49 or $50 worth of product. And one vape cartridge of 95% THC, this is on their website this morning, I just looked this morning, 95% Delta 8 THC costs $60. So you can have this shipped to your home for free anywhere in Georgia. So that's why we would like to address Delta 8, to try to take some huge portion of high THC products off our shelves. Any questions? Otherwise, that's...
No, thank you. And the since the time we got several other speakers for this bill, thank you for being here. Next, Marty Ravinda, would you come and like to speak to the bill?
Good morning. Thank you for letting me be here today. So I'm a mom of a young man who is my heart outside of my body. He's a wonderful young man. We raised him in the church, and he was an AP student in high school. He played on the soccer team, very popular, had a lot of friends. He's a great young man. And I've had that comment many, many times up to this day. But what I'd like to share with you is in the fall of 2019, one of our family friends came to my front door and said, "Your son's getting high in the bathroom at school, smoking high-potency THC." They didn't say high potency, smoking THC in the bathroom in high school. This is not too far after we had actually caught him getting high within our home. We set boundaries and all that stuff. It didn't matter. My son still got high in the bathroom. At that point, my husband and I realized that it was a problem for our son. So we very quickly put him into an intensive outpatient program. He participated in that program for about 6 weeks. He couldn't stay sober because he's addicted to high potency THC. We put him into an inpatient program for 45 days. He came home, thought he was fixed. He's fixed, right? By, this was in November, by Valentine's Day, he was getting high again. We had to, and mind you, my son's 16 years old, and my husband and I had to tell him he couldn't live in our home anymore and continue to get high. That is the only boundary that we really could use. So he went and slept on a friend's sofa for about a week and said, I'm gonna get sober. I'm gonna stick with it. So he gave it another try. By middle of March, almost this time, 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, 5 years ago, he got kicked out of his intensive outpatient program because he couldn't stay sober. He couldn't stay away from the high potency THC. That was the point where my husband and I said, I'm sorry, it gets me upset every time. You can't live here anymore. He's barely 17 years old. But he couldn't stay sober, and we were out of resources. And we said, here's your option. You can go to an intensive inpatient program, or you can pack, I got a bag of clothes for you, and you can go figure it out. I'm a fortunate mom. My son made the decision to go into an inpatient program. On March 13th, my son will celebrate 5 years of sobriety. But that doesn't mean that he's fixed. He will always want to get high. And that the availability of high potency THC, and I can't stand up here and debate with you whether it was Delta 8 or what strain it is. It's high potency THC that it's killing our youth. So out of my passion of being a sponsor and a mentor to other parents with young people who are challenged with substance use disorder, and on behalf of my son, who is now a substance use counselor, we ask you to pass this, to have some form of restrictions on high potency THC. If not on a daily, on at least a weekly basis, as a parent coach and a mentor to other parents who are challenged with youth, as young as 12 years old, who are coming through programs seeking help to get their children off high potency THC and help them find sobriety. I'm here to ask that you please pass this bill to save our future generations from being mentally incapacitated because of or just damaging their lives in general by using these products. So thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to come here, and I think this committee's heard your passion and your thoughts on this bill. Thank you very much for being here this early morning for that. We do have a couple more speakers. Greg Redonda, if you'd like, and we're on a very short time schedule. We've got other committees after this one. If you could limit it to a couple minutes, would be best.
I'm Dr. Greg Reduca. I'm the Vice President with Georgians for Responsible Marijuana Policy. For the last 50 years, I've been involved with substance abuse prevention and treatment, so I've heard many, many stories over those years, just like Ms. Riveda's. And lately, more and more stories about Delta 8 products, which proliferate vape stores, convenience stores. It's all over the place. So very important legislation, and we thank Representative Sainz so much for offering this legislation. And Mr. Chair and committee members, thank you so much for taking time to hear us today. That's greatly appreciated. I have a ABCs of THC in your packet because I know this can be complex stuff, chemistry, biology, and so forth. So this was very helpful to me, actually, making this handout for you because I realized how much it's been needed. So I won't belabor some of the pieces in this that have already been explained to you, but THC and CBD are the two cannabinoids we know the most about because they make the most news, and they affect the nervous system. THC gets you high and sometimes addicted. CBD doesn't. CBD can be medicine for epileptic children, for example, which has been great. The 10 milligrams, to the point that have been made, can get the new user high, just 10 milligrams. That's not very much. That's the amount that can be in one gummy. Hemp happens to be loaded with CBD, the good stuff. The problem is that per the chemical structure on your handout, even though they don't sound very alike, they have completely different names, CBD, THC, they are very similar chemically in structure. And so it's very easy for someone to go in and synthetically take CBD and make it into THC. And many different kinds of synthetic THC. And Delta 9 is just one of those kinds. So if we only limit Delta 9, then we're not doing anything with the other kinds of THC like Delta 8.
Can I stop you right there? Let's speak to that. If we prohibit Delta 8, there's lots of other options out there for these folks to go to. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. We felt like Delta 8 could be a starting point, hopefully, because on the bottom of your sheet, you'll see various other kinds of synthetic THC, which can be made from CBD and are being marketed. And some of these are being marketed as 30 times more powerful than Delta 9. So what that would do to children, I have no idea. Well, I do have an idea because it affects brain development and other things like that. So the kids are really where I'm coming from. I'm a volunteer at this point because I've retired. And so it's just so important for the well-being of Georgia's children in particular that this bill be passed. I could conclude with something from 20 states have closed the Delta loophole, as it's called, that allows the products with Delta 8 in them. Chris Carr signed on to a letter from 20 states' attorneys general to try and get Congress to close the loophole. And just a sentence or two, that hemp-derived intoxicants like Delta 8 have proliferated across our states, posing a significant threat to public health and safety, benefiting...
Thank you. I appreciate it. We're out of time. I've got a couple more speakers that need to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call Catherine Russell, Department of Ag. I think our commissioner's unavailable. Catherine is, I've first met Catherine, I think, at a study committee on hemp 3 or 4 years ago. She knows a lot about this hot topic, and she is counsel for the Department of Ag. Many of you know her, and I just want to ask Catherine, if you can this morning, is kind of update the committee on what the department is doing as far as this committee, I think, passed legislation through last year to give the commissioner authority to regulate a lot of these products and businesses that sell them, and just maybe give us an update on where the department is on that and the posture that we're in right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee members. Catherine Russell, Director of Policy at the Department of Agriculture. Last year, the legislature passed SB 494, which allowed us to have, I'm sorry, do y'all hear an echo? Okay. Is that better? Okay. So last year, the legislature passed SB 494, which gave us regulatory authority to oversee the hemp industry in the retail, wholesale, and manufacturing markets. And so we've been working on that. As the commissioner mentioned to you when he came and visited earlier this session, we actually went through 2 rounds of rulemaking to go ahead and build out the program. We've hired post-certified officers and civilian inspectors and have started rolling all of those inspections out. Our most recent set of rules actually went into effect the first week of January. So we were not fully running things until about a month ago, right? So what we're expecting to see, well, I'm sorry, let me back that up a little bit. So with our consumer safety bill last year, we already knew where we were with D9 and what was expected, Delta 9. We did not push with that bill any changed or new policy concerning other cannabinoids or isomers, because at that point we felt like it was a policy decision that really needed to be weighed by the legislature. I know that the terminology is to call it a loophole. I actually don't think it's a loophole. I think that it's a policy that has not yet been considered by the legislature. It's a very important policy, and we would like direction on it. However, one of the big concerns that we have right now, before our big concern, there are products on the shelves that are marketed as D8 and Delta 10 products. And as we go and test, we're expecting a lot of those actually to be Delta 9 products. It's much more abundant, it's cheaper, it's more effective. And so we're finding that when we do test, we're finding lots of Delta 9 products that are being marketed as something else. So we're anticipating seeing much lesser sales moving forward. One of the concerns that we have, oftentimes things appear to be a simple problem or a simple concern, and there's a simple solution. And I would submit to you that this is one of those situations that appears that way. However, I believe it's a much more complex problem, and the ramifications for handling it without taking due consideration of how it's going to affect the consumers long term, I think it's something that we really need to probably consider. So if you were to look at what's available now, you've got your D9, which we know where we stand on that. You've got D8, which can be naturally occurring and is less potent than D9. You've also got THCP, which is really, really potent. You've got HHC that doesn't occur on its own. You have to actually make that by running it across a metal column. You do a profile on those, they all have spikes for heavy metals, and people are vaping these, right? So when we look at the situation, we think that it's important to have a comprehensive understanding of what is available and not pick at some pieces that are easy to identify and arguably less potent, therefore pushing consumers further to the fringe to more, because the minute that you say HHC is illegal, well, they're going to go make something else in 10 or 14 days and it'll be on the market. And we have no idea what that is. And we know that there are spikes that show up on those profile tests that people are ingesting, and we don't know what they are. So we have not yet had the opportunity to really dig into this problem the way that we would like to. And I also think it's important, I say problem, I think it's important to identify when you're looking at what's an intoxicating cannabinoid. Well, some people may list CBD or CBN, which is not anywhere near the same thing as THCP. So I've had some conversations with our lab, local lab here in Georgia, and learned a bunch of really interesting information from some of the folks that work there, particularly about how our C1 receptors in our brains receive the intoxicating products, how some of them may be mitigated if you also have CBD in any of the product that you're ingesting. And this is a lot more complex than it may appear to be. So I would just submit to you that we think that it would be more responsible for our consuming public to pause, figure out what we're dealing with, really target it in a way that's comprehensive and achieves the goals that we set out to achieve, rather than having to come year after year creating a list and potentially push the consuming public into consuming things that are they're further derived, they're further synthetically altered, and potentially more dangerous.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that. It is 9 o'clock, and I appreciate the author bringing this to our attention. It is a problem, and I'm open to trying to find solutions for this. I think everybody is. If there's no other business, I would adjourn this meeting. Thank you.